Welcome back, knights and dames of all lands. Once again, we meet at the round table for another tale of chivalry, bravery, and danger. Today we talk of the brave Sir Galahad and his quest for the greatest of all things, the Holy Grail. If you have joined us all the way to this point, I thank you for returning, and give a like and subscribe, and tell me below from what land ye cometh. Now, with that out of the way, the knights go to seek the Grail, and we go with them. Sir Galahad and the quest of the Holy Grail. After these things, Merlin fell into a dotage of love for a damsel of the Lady of the Lake, and would let her have no rest, but followed her in every place, and ever she encouraged him and made him welcome, till she had learned all his crafts that she desired to know. Then upon a time she went with him beyond the sea to the land of Benwick, and as they went he showed her many wonders, till at length she was afraid, and would fain have been delivered from him. And as they were in the forest of Brocliande, they sat together under an oak tree, and the damsel prayed to see all that charm whereby men might be shut up yet alive in rocks or trees. But he refused her a long time, fearing to let her know, yet in the end her prayers and kisses overcame him, and he told her all. Then did she make him great cheer, but anon, as he lay down to sleep, she softly rose, and walked about him, waving her hands and muttering the charm, and presently enclosed him fast within the tree whereby he slept, and therefrom never more he could by any means come out for all the crafts that he could do. And so she departed, and left Merlin. At the vigil, at the next feast of Pentecost, when all the knights of the Round Table were met together at Camelot, and had heard mass, and were about to sit down to a meal, there rode into the hall a fair lady on horseback, who went straight up to King Arthur where he sat upon his throne, and reverently saluted him. "God be with thee, fair damsel," quoth the king. "What desirest thou of me?" "I pray thee tell, my lord," she answered, "where Sir Lancelot is." "Yonder ye may see him," said King Arthur. Then she went to Sir Lancelot and said, "Sir, I salute thee in King Pele's name, and require me to come with me into the forest hereby." Then asked he with whom she dwelt, and what she wished of him. "I dwell with King Pelles," she said, "whom Balin erst so sorely wounded when he smote the dolorous stroke. It is he who hath sent me to call upon thee." "I will go with thee gladly," answered Sir Lancelot, and bade his squire straightway saddle his horse and bring his armour. Then came the queen to him and said, "Sir Lancelot, will ye leave me thus at this high feast?" "Madam," replied the damsel, "by dinner time tomorrow he shall be with you." "If I thought not," said the queen, "he should not go with thee by my good will." Then Sir Lancelot and the lady rode forth till they came to the forest, and in a valley thereof found an abbey of nuns, whereby a squire stood ready to open the gates. When they had entered and descended from their horses, a joyful crowd pressed round Sir Lancelot and heartily saluted him, and led him to the abbess's chamber and unarmed him. Anon he saw his cousins likewise there, Sir Bors and Sir Lionel, who also made great joy upon seeing him, and said, By what adventure art thou here? For we thought to have seen thee at Camelot tomorrow. He replied, A damsel brought me here, but as yet I know not for what service. As they thus talked, 12 nuns came in, who brought with them a youth so passing fair and well made that in all the world his match could not be found, and his name was Sir Galahad. Well, though they knew him not, nor Lancelot him, Sir Lancelot was his father. Sir, said the nuns, we bring thee here this child whom we have nourished from his youth, and pray thee make him a knight, for from no worthier hand can he receive that order. Then Sir Lancelot, looking on the youth, saw that he was seemly and demure as a dove, with every feature good and noble, and thought he had beheld a better fashioned man of his years never. Cometh this desire from himself? He said. Yea, answered Galahad, and all the nuns alike. Tomorrow, then, in reverence for the feast, he shall have his wish, said Sir Lancelot. And the next day, at the hour of the prime, he knighted him, and said, God make of thee as good as a man, as he made thee beautiful. Then with Sir Lionel and Sir Bors he returned to the court, and found all gone to the minster to hear service. When they came to the banquet hall, each knight and baron found his name written in some seat in letters of gold, as Here ought to sit Sir Lionel, here ought to sit Sir Gawain, and so forth. And in the perilous seat, at the high centre of the table, a name was also written, whereat they marvelled greatly, for no living man had ever yet dared sit upon that seat, save one, and him a flame leaped forth and drew down under earth, so that he was never seen again. Then came Sir Lancelot, and read the letters in that seat, and said, My counsel is that this inscription be now covered up until the knights be come who shall achieve this great adventure. So they made a veil of silk, and put it over the letters. In the meantime came Sir Gawain to the court, and told the king that he had a message from him from beyond the sea, from Merlin. For, he said, as I rode through the forest of Broceliande but 5 days since, I heard the voice of Merlin, speaking to me, from the midst of an oak tree, whereat in great amazement I besought him to come forth. But he with many groans replied he would never more do so, that none could free him, save the damsel of the lake, who had enclosed him there by his own spells which he had taught her. But go, said he, to King Arthur, and tell him that he now prepare his knights and all the Round Table to seek the Sangreal, for the time is come when it shall be achieved. When Sir Gawain had spoken thus, King Arthur sat pensive in spirit, and mused deeply of the Holy Grail, and what saintly knight should come who might achieve it. Anon he bade them hasten to set on the banquet. Sir, said Sir Kay, the seneschal, if we go now to meat, ye will break the ancient custom of your court, for never have ye dined at this high feast till ye have seen some strange adventure. Thou sayest truly, said the king, but my mind was full of wonders and musings, till I bethought me not of mine old custom. As they stood speaking thus, a squire ran in and cried, Lord, I bring thee marvellous tidings. What be they? Said King Arthur. Lord, he said, here by the river is a great marvellous stone, which I myself saw swim down hitherwards upon the water, and in there is set a sword, and ever the stone heaveth and swayeth upon the water, but floateth down no further with the stream. I will go and see this, said the king. And so all the knights went with him, and when they came to the river, there surely found they a mighty stone of red marble floating upon the water, just as the squire had said, and therein struck a fair and rich sword on the pommel, whereof were precious stones wrought skilfully with gold into these words, No man shall take me hence, but he by whose side I should hang, and he shall be the best knight in the world. When the king read this, he turned round to Sir Lancelot, and said, Fair sir, the sword ought to surely be thine, for thou art the best knight in the world. But Lancelot answered soberly, Certainly, sir, it is not for me, nor will I have the hardihood to set my hand upon it, for he that toucheth it and faileth to achieve it shall one day be wounded by it mortally. But I doubt not, Lord, this day will show the greatest marvels that we have yet seen, for now the time is fully come, as Merlin hath forewarned us, when all the prophecies about Sangreal shall be fulfilled. Then stepped Sir Gawain forward and pulled out the sword, but he could not move it, and after him Sir Percival, to keep him fellowship in any peril he might suffer, but no other knight durst be so hardy as to try. Now may ye go to your dinner, said Sir Kay, for a marvellous adventure ye have had. So all returned from the river, and every knight sat down in his own place, and the high feast and banquet was then sumptuously began, and all the hall was full of laughter and loud talk and jests, and running to and fro of squires who served their knights, and noise of jolly and mirth. Then suddenly befell quite a wondrous thing, for all the doors and windows of the hall shut violently of themselves, and made thick darkness, and presently there came a fair and gentle light from out of the perilous seat, and filled the palace with its glorious beams. Then a dead silence fell on all the knights, and each man anxiously beheld his neighbour. But King Arthur rose and said, Lords and fair knights, have ye no fear, but rejoice. We have seen strange things today, but stranger things yet remain. For now I know we shall today see him who may sit in the siege perilous, and shall achieve the Sangreal. For as ye all well know, that holy vessel, wherefrom the supper of our Lord before his death he drank the wine with his disciples, have been held ever since the holiest treasures of the world, and wheresoever it hath rested, peace and prosperity have rested with it upon the land. But since the dolorous stroke which Balin gave King Pelles, none have seen it, for heaven, wroth with the presumptuous blow, hath hid it none know where. Yet somewhere in the world it still may be, and may be it left to us, and to this noble order of the Table Round, to find and bring it home, and make this our realm the happiest in the earth. Many great quests and perilous adventures have ye all taken, and have ye all achieved, but this high quest he only shall attain who hath clean hands and pure heart, and valor and hardiness beyond all other men. While the king spoke, there came in softly an old man all robed in white, leading with him a young knight clad in red from top to toe, but without armour or shield, and having by his side an empty scabbard. The old man went up to the king and said, Lord, here I bring thee this young knight of royal lineage, and of the blood of Joseph of Arimathea, by which the marvels of thy court shall be fully accomplished. The knight was right and glad of his words, and said, Sir, ye be right heartily welcome, and the young knight also with you. Then the old man put on Sir Galahad, for it was he, a crimson robe trimmed with fine ermine, and took by him the hand, and led him to the perilous seat, and lifting up the silken cloth which was hung upon it, read the words written in gold letters. This is the seat of Sir Galahad, the good knight. Sir, said the old man, this place is thine. Then sat Sir Galahad down, firmly and surely, and said to the old man, Sir, ye may go now to your way, for ye have done well, and truly all ye were commanded, and commend me to thy grandsire, King Pelles, and say that I shall see him soon. So the old man departed with the retinue of 20 noble squires, and all the knights of the Round Table marvelled at Sir Galahad and at his tender age, and as his sitting there, so surely, in the perilous seat. Then the king led Sir Galahad forth from the palace, to show him the adventure of the floating stone. Here, said he, is as great a marvel as I ever saw, and right good knights have tried and failed to gain that sword. I marvel not thereat, said Sir Galahad, for this adventure is not theirs, but it is mine, and for the certainty I had thereof, I brought no sword with me, as thou mayest see here by this empty scabbard. Anon he laid his hand upon the sword, and lightly he drew it from the stone, and put it in his sheath, and said, This sword was that enchanted one which erst belonged to the good knight Sir Balin, wherewith he slew through piteous mistake his brother Balan, who also slew him at the same time. All which great woe befell him through the dolorous strike he gave my grandsire King Pelles, the wound whereof is not yet whole, nor shall be until I heal him. As he stood speaking thus, they saw a lady riding swiftly down the river's bank towards them, on a white palfrey, who, saluting the king and queen, said, Lord King, Nacien the hermit sendeth thee word that to thee shall come today the greatest honour and worship that hath ever befallen upon a king of Britain. For this day the Sangreal appear in thy house. With that the damsel took her leave, and departed the same way she came. Now, said the king, I know that from today the quest of the Sangreal shall begin, and all ye of the Round Table will be scattered, so that never more shall I see ye again together as ye are now. Let me then see a joust and tournament amongst ye for the last time before ye go. And so they all took their harnesses and met together in the meadows by Camelot, and the queen and her ladies sat in a tower to see. Then Sir Galahad, at the prayer of the king and queen, put on a coat of light armour, and a helmet, but shield he would take none, and grasping a lance, he drove into the middle of the press of knights, and began to break spears marvellously, so that all men were full of great wonder. And in so short a time he had surmounted, and that exceeding the rest save Sir Lancelot and Percival, that he took the chief worship of the field. Then the king and all the court and fellowship of knights went back to the palace, and so to evensong in the great minster, a royal and goodly company. And after they sat down to supper in the hall, every knight in his own seat, just as they had been before. Anon suddenly burst overhead the cracking and crying of great peals of thunder, till the palace walls were sorely shaken, and they thought to see them riven all to pieces. And in the midst of the blast entered a sunbeam, clearer by 7 times than ever they had seen the day, and a marvellous great glory fell upon them all. Then each knight, looking on his neighbour, found his face fairer than he had ever seen, and so all standing to their feet, they gazed as numb men to each other, not knowing what to say. Then entered into the hall the Sangreal, borne aloft, with hands through the midst of the sunbeam and covered with white samite, so that none might see it. And all the hall was filled with perfume and incense, and every knight was fed with the food he best loved. And when the holy vessel had been thus borne through the hall, it suddenly departed. No man saw whither. When they recovered breath to speak, King Arthur first rose up, and yielded thanks to God and to our Lord. Then Sir Gawain sprang up and said, Now have we all been fed by a miracle with whatsoever food we thought we have desired, but with our eyes we have not seen the blessed vessel whence it came, so carefully and so preciously was it concealed. Therefore I make a vow that from tomorrow I shall labour 12 months and a day in the quest of the Sangreal, for longer if it may need be. Nor will I come again into this court until mine eyes have seen it evidently. When he had spoken thus, knight after knight rose up and vowed themselves to the same quest, till the most part of the Round Table had thus sworn. But when King Arthur heard them all, he could not refrain his eyes from tears, and said, Sir Gawain, thou hast set me in great sorrow, for I fear me my true fellowship shall never meet here again, and surely never Christian king had such a company of worthy knights around his table at one time. And when the queen and her ladies and gentlewomen heard the vows, they had such a grief and a sorrow as no tongue could ever tell, and Queen Guinevere cried out, I marvel that my lord will suffer them to depart from him. And many of the ladies who loved the knights would have gone with them, but were forbidden by the hermit Nasian, who sent this message to all had sworn themselves in the quest. Take with ye no lady nor gentlewoman, for into so high service as ye go in, no thought but of our Lord in heaven may enter. On the morrow morning, all knights rose early, and when they were fully armed save shields and helms, they went in with the king and queen to service in their minster. Then the king counted all who had taken the adventure on themselves, and found them 150 knights of the Round Table, and so they all put on their helms, and rode away together in the midst of cries and lamentations from the court, and from the ladies, and from all the town. But the queen went alone into her chamber, that no man might witness her sorrow, and Sir Lancelot followed her to say farewell. When she saw him, she cried out, Oh, Sir Lancelot, thou hast betrayed me, thou hast put me to death thus to depart and leave my lord the king. Ah, madam, he said, be not displeased or angry, for I shall come again as soon as I can with honour. Alas, she said, that I ever saw thee, but he that suffereth death upon the cross for all mankind be to thee safety and good conduct, and to all thy company. Then Sir Lancelot saluted her and the king, and went forth with the rest, and came with them that night to Castle Vagon, where they abode, and on the morrow they departed from each other on their separate ways, every knight taking the way that pleased him the best. Now Sir Galahad went forth without a shield, and rode so forth 4 days without adventure. But on the 4th day, after evensong, he came to an abbey of white monks, where he was received in the house, and led into a chamber. And there he was unarmed, and met 2 knights of the Round Table, King Bagdemagus and Sir Uwaine. Sirs, said Sir Galahad, what adventure hath ye brought here? "Within this place, as we are told," they answered. "There is a shield no man may bear around his neck without receiving sore mischance or death within 3 days." "Tomorrow," said King Bagdemagus, "I shall attempt the adventure, and if I fail, do thou, Sir Galahad, take it up after me." "I will do so willingly," he said, "for as ye seen, I have no shield as of yet." So upon the morrow they arose and heard mass, and afterwards King Bagdemagus asked where the shield was kept. Then a monk led him behind the altar, where the shield hung, as white as any snow, and with a blood-red cross in the midst of it. "Sir," said the monk, "this shield should hang from no knight's neck, unless he be the worthiest in the world. I warn ye, therefore, knights, consider well before ye dare touch it." "Well," said King Bagdemagus, "I know well that I am far from the best knight in all the world, yet shall I make the trial?" And so he took up the shield and bore it from the monastery. "If it please thee," said he to Sir Galahad, "abide here until thou hearest how I speed." "I will abide thee," he said. Then taking with him a squire who might return with any tidings to Sir Galahad, the king rode forth, and before he had gone 2 miles, he saw in a fair valley a hermitage, and a knight who came forth dressed in white armour, horse and all, who rode fast against him. When they encountered, Bagdemagus broke his spear upon the white knight's shield, but was himself struck through the shoulder with a sore wound, and hurled down from his horse. Then the white knight, alighting, came and took the white shield from the king, and said, "Thou hast done great folly, for this shield ought never to have been borne, but by one who hath no living peer." And turning to the squire, he said, "Bear thou this shield to the good knight Sir Galahad, and greet him well from me." "In whose name shall I make the greeting?" said the squire. "Take no heed of that," he answered. "It is not for thee or any earthly man to know." "Now tell me, fair sir, at the least," said the squire, "why may this shield be never borne, except his wearer come to injury or death?" "Because it shall belong to no man save its rightful owner, Galahad," replied the knight. Then the squire went to his master, and found him wounded nigh to death, wherefore he fetched his horse, and bore him back with him to the abbey. And there they laid him in a bed, and looked to his wounds. And when he had lain many days grievously sick, he and the last barely escaped with his life. "Sir Galahad," said the squire, "the knight who overthrew King Bagdemagus sent you greeting, and bade you bear his shield." "Now blessed be God and fortune," said Galahad, and hung the shield around his neck, and armed him, and rode forth. Anon he met the white knight by the hermitage, and each saluted courteously the other. "Sir," said Sir Galahad, "this shield I bear hath surely a full marvellous history." "Thou sayest rightly," he answered. "That shield was made in the days of Joseph of Arimathea, the gentle knight who took our Lord down from the cross. He, when he left Jerusalem with his kindred, came to the country of King Evelake, who warred continually with one Ptolemy. And when, by teaching of Joseph, King Evelake became a Christian, this shield was made for him in the name of our Lord, and through its aid King Ptolemy was defeated. And when King Evelake met him next in battle, he hid it in a veil, and suddenly uncovering it, he showed his enemies the figure of a bleeding man nailed to a cross, a sight of which they were discomfited and fled. Presently after that, a man whose hand was smitten off touched the cross upon the shield, and had his hand restored to him, and many other miracles it worked. But suddenly the cross that was upon it vanished away. Anon both Joseph and King Evelake came to Britain, and by the preaching of Joseph the people were made Christians. And when at length he lay upon his deathbed, King Everlake begged of him some token ere he died. There, calling for his shield, he dipped his finger in his own blood, for he was bleeding fast and none could staunch the wound, and marked the cross upon it, saying the words, "This cross shall ever show as bright as now, and the last of my lineage shall wear this shield about his neck, and go forth to all marvellous deeds he shall achieve." When the White Knight had thus spoken, he vanished suddenly away, and Sir Galahad returned to the abbey. As he alighted, came a monk, and prayed him go see a tomb in the churchyard, wherefrom came such a great and hideous noise that none could hear it, but they went nigh mad or lost all strength. "And, sir," he said, "I deem it as a fiend." "Lead me thither," said Sir Galahad. When they were come near the place, "Now," said the monk, "go thou to the tomb and lift it up." And Galahad, nothing afraid, quickly lifted up the stone, and forthwith came out a foul smoke, and from the midst of therefore leapt up the loathliest figure that have ever seen the likeliness of man. And Galahad blessed himself, for he knew that this was a fiend of hell. Then he heard a voice crying out, "O Galahad, I cannot tear thee as I would. I see so many angels round thee, that I may not come at thee." Then the fiend suddenly disappeared, with a marvellous and great cry. Sir Galahad, looking on the tomb, saw there a body all armed, and a sword beside it. "Now, fair brother," said he to the monk, "let us remove this cursed body, which is not fit to lie in a church courtyard, for when it lived, a false and perjured Christian man dwelt within. Cast it away, and there shall come no more hideous noises from that terrible tomb. And now I must depart," he added, "for I have much in hand, and I am upon the holy quest of the Sangreal, with a good many more knights." So he took his leave, and many journeys backwards and forwards as adventure would lead him, and at last one day he departed from a castle without first hearing mass, which was it ever his custom to hear before he left his lodging. Anon he found a ruined chapel on a mountain, and went in and kneeled before the altar, and prayed for wholesome counsel what to do, and as he prayed he heard a voice which said, "Depart, adventurous knight, unto the maiden's castle, and redress the violence and wrongs there done." Hearing these words, he cheerfully arose, and mounted his horse, and rode but half a mile, when he saw before him a strong castle with deep ditches around it, and a fair river running past. And seeing an old churl hard by, he asked him what men called that castle. "Fair sir," he said, "it is the maiden's castle." "It is a cursed place," said Galahad, "and all its masters are but felons full of mischief and hardness and shame." "For that good reason," said the old man, "thou art well advised to turn thee back." "For that same reason," quoth Sir Galahad, "will I more certainly ride on." Then, looking at his armour more carefully, to see nothing had failed him, he went forward, and presently there met with 7 damsels, who cried out, "Sir Knight, thou ridest in great peril, for thou hast 2 waters to pass over." "Why should I not pass over them?" said he, and rode straight on. Anon he met a squire, who said, "Sir Knight, the masters of these castles defy thee, and bid thee go no further till thou showest them thy business here." "Fair fellow," said Sir Galahad, "I am come to destroy them and their wicked customs." "If it be thy purpose," he answered, "thou wilt have much to do." "Go thou," said Sir Galahad, "and hasten with my message." In a few minutes after, rode forth furiously from the gateways of the castle 7 knights, all brothers, and crying out, "Knight, keep thee," bore down all at once upon Sir Galahad, but thrusting forth his spear he smote them the foremost to the earth. so that his neck was almost broken, and warded with his shield the spears of all others, which every one of them brake from it, and shivered into pieces. Then he drew out his sword, and set upon them hard and fiercely, and by his wondrous force drove them before him, and chased them to the castle gate, and there they were slain. At that came out to him an ancient man in priest's vestments, saying, Behold, sir, here the keys of this castle. Then he unlocked the gates, and found within a multitude of people who cried out, Sir knight, ye be welcome, for long have we waited thy deliverance, and told them that 7 felons he had slain had long enslaved the people round about, and killed all knights who passed that way, because the maiden whom they had robbed of the castle had foretold that one night they should themselves be overthrown. Where is the maiden? Said Sir Galahad. She lingereth below in a dungeon, they replied. So Sir Galahad went down and released her, and restored her all her inheritance, and when he had summoned the barons of the country to do her homage, he took his leave and departed. Presently thereafter, as he rode, he entered a great forest, and in a glade thereof met 2 knights disguised, who proffered him to joust. These were Sir Lancelot his father, and Sir Percival, but neither knew the other. So he and Sir Lancelot encountered first, and Sir Galahad smote down his father. Then, drawing his sword, for his spear was broken, he fought with Sir Percival, and struck so mightily that he clave his helm and smote him from his horse. Now, hard by where they fought, there was a hermitage, where dwelt a pious woman, a recluse, who, when she heard the sound, came forth, and seeing Sir Galahad ride, she cried, God be with thee, the best knight in the world. Had yonder knights known thee as well as I do, they would not have encountered with thee. When Sir Galahad heard this, fearing to be made known, he forthwith smote his horse with his spurs, and departed with a great pace. Sir Lancelot and Sir Percival heard her words too, and rode fast after him, but within a while he was well out of their sight. Then Sir Percival rode back to ask his name of the recluse, but Sir Lancelot went forward on his quest, and following any path his horse would take, he came by and by after nightfall to a stone cross hard by an ancient chapel. When he had alighted and tied his horse up to a tree, he went and looked in through the chapel door, which was all ruinous and wasted, and there within he saw an altar, richly decked with silk. Thereupon there stood a fair candlestick of silver, bearing 6 great lights. And when Sir Lancelot saw the light, he tried to get within the chapel, but could find no place. So, being passing weary and heavy, he came again to his horse, and when he had unsaddled him and set him free to pasture, he unlaced his helm and ungirdled his sword, and laid him down to sleep upon his shield before the cross. While he lay in between waking and sleeping, he saw come by him 2 white palfreys bearing a litter, wherein a sick knight lay, and the palfreys stood still by the cross. Then Sir Lancelot heard the sick man say, O sweet Lord, when shall this sorrow leave me, and the holy vessel pass by me, whether I shall be blessed, for I have long endured. With that Sir Lancelot saw the chapel open, and the candlestick with 6 tapers came before the cross, but he could not see who bore it. Then came there also a table of silver, and thereon the holy vessel of the Sangreal. And when the sick knight saw that, he sat up, and lifting both of his hands, said, Fair Lord, who art here with this holy vessel, have mercy upon me, that I may be whole. And therewith he crept upon his hands and knees so nigh that he might touch the vessel, and when he had kissed it, he leaped up he stood and cried aloud, "Lord God, I thank thee, for I am made whole." Then the Holy Grail departed with the table and silver candlestick into the chapel, so that Sir Lancelot saw it no more, nor for his sin's sake could he follow it, and the knight who was healed went upon his way. Sir Lancelot awoke, and marvelled whether he had seen aught but a dream. And as he marvelled, he heard a voice saying to him, "Sir Lancelot, thou art unworthy. Go thou hence and withdraw thee from this holy place." And when he heard that, he was passing heavy, for he bethought him of his sins. So he departed, weeping, and cursed the day of his birth, for the words went to his heart, and he knew wherefore he was thus driven forth. Then he went to seek his arms and horse, but could not find them. And then he called himself the most wretched and most unhappy of all knights, and said, "My sin hath brought me unto great dishonour. For when I sought earthly honours I achieved them ever, but now I take upon me holy things. My guilt doth hinder me and shameth me. Therefore I had no power to stir or speak when the holy blood appeared before me." So thus sorrowed till it was day, and he heard the birds sing. Then was he somewhat comforted, and departing from the cross on foot, he came into a wild forest and to a high mountain. And there he found a hermitage, and kneeling before the hermit upon both his knees, he cried for mercy for his wicked works, and prayed him to hear his confession. But when he told his name, the hermit marvelled to see him in so sore a case, and said, "Sir, ye ought to thank God more than any knight living, for he hath given thee more honour than any other. Yet for thy presumption, while in deadly sin, to come to the presence of his flesh and blood, he suffered thee neither to see nor follow it. Wherefore believe that all thy strength and manhood will avail thee little when God is against thee." Then Sir Lancelot wept and said, "Now know I well ye tell me the truth." Then he confessed to him, and told him of all of his sins, and how he had 14 years served but Queen Guinevere only, and forgotten God, and done great deeds of arms for her, and not for the Almighty, and had done little or nothing, thanked God for the honour that he won. And then Sir Lancelot said, "I pray you counsel me." "I will counsel thee," said he. "Never more enter into that queen's company, when you can avoid it." And so Sir Lancelot promised him of that. "Look that your heart and your mouth accord," said the good man, "and ye shall never have any more honour or more nobleness than ye have ever had." Then were his arms and horse restored to him, and so in this way he took his leave, riding forth repenting greatly. Now Sir Percivale had ridden back to the recluse to learn what that knight was whom she had called the best in the world, and when he had told her that he was Sir Percivale, she made passing joy of him, for she was his mother's sister, wherefore she opened her door to him and made him good cheer. And on the morrow she told him of her kindred to him, and they both made great rejoicing. Then he asked her who that knight was, and she told him. He it is who on Whitsunday was last clad in the red robe, and bare and red arms, and he hath no peer, for he worketh all by miracle, and shall never be overcome by any earthly hand. "By my good will," said Percivale, "I will never, after these tidings, have to do with Sir Galahad, but in the way of kindness, and I would fain learn where I may find him." "Fair nephew," she said, "ye must ride to the castle of Goth." where he hath a cousin. By him ye may be lodged, and he will teach you the way to go. But if he can tell you no tidings, ride straight to the castle of Corbenic, where the wounded king is lying, for there ye shall surely hear the true tidings of him. And so Sir Percival departed, and rode till evensong time, when he was ware of the monastery closed round with the walls and deep ditches, where he knocked at the gate, and anon was let in. And there he had a good cheer that night, and on the morrow heard mass, and beside the altar where the priest stood was a rich bed of silk and cloth of gold, and on the bed there lay a man passing old, having a crown of gold upon his head, and all his body was full of great wounds, and his eyes almost wholly blind. And ever he held up his hands and said, Sweet Lord, forget not me. Then Sir Percival asked one of the brethren who he was. Sir, said the good man, ye have heard of Joseph of Arimathea, how he was sent of Jesus Christ into this land to preach and teach the Christian faith. Now in the city of Sarras he converted a king named Evelake, and this is he. He came with Joseph to this land, and have desired greatly to see the Sangreal. So on a time he came nigh thereto, and was struck almost blind. There he cried out of mercy, and said, Fair Lord, I pray thee let me never die until a good knight of my blood achieve the Sangreal, and I may see him. When he had thus prayed, he heard a voice that said, Thy prayers be answered. Thou shalt not die till that knight seeth thee and kiss thee. And when he cometh, shall thine eyes be opened and thy wounds be healed. And now he hath lived here for 300 winters in a holy life. And men say a certain knight of King Arthur's court shall shortly come and heal him. Thereat Sir Percival marvelled greatly, for he well knew who that knight should be, and so, taking his leave of the monk, departed. Then he rode on till noon, and came into a valley where he met 20 men-at-arms bearing a dead knight on a bier. And they cried to him, Whence comest thou? From King Arthur's court, he answered. They all cried together, Slay him, and set upon him. But he smote down the first man to the ground, and his horse upon him, whereat 7 of them all at once assailed him, and others slew his horse. Thus he had been either taken or slain, but by good chance Sir Galahad was passing by that way, who, seeing 20 men attacking one, cried out, Slay him not, and rushed upon them, and as fast as his horse could drive him he encountered with the foremost man and smote him down. Then, his spear being broken, he drew forth his sword and struck out on the right hand and on the left, at each blow smiting down a man, till the remainder fled and he pursued them. Then Sir Percival, knowing that it was Sir Galahad, would fain have overtaken him, but could not, for his own horse was slain. Yet followed he on foot as fast as he could go, and as he went there met him a yeoman riding on a palfrey, and leading his hand a great black steed. So Sir Percival prayed him to lend him the steed that he might overtake Sir Galahad. But he replied, That I cannot do, fair sir, for this horse is my master's, and should I lend it he will slay me. So he departed, and Sir Percival sat down beneath a tree in the heaviness of heart. And as he sat, anon a knight went riding past on the black steed which the yeoman had led, and presently came after the yeoman back in haste, and asked Sir Percival if he had seen a knight riding his horse. Yea, said Percival. Alas, said the yeoman, he hath reft him, by my strength, and my master will slay me." Then he besought Sir Percival to take his hackney and follow, and get back to his steed. So he rode quickly and overtook the knight and cried, "Knight, turn again." Whereat he turned and set his spear and smote Sir Percival's hackney in the breast, so that it fell down dead, and then went on his way. Then cried Sir Percival after him, "Turn now, false knight, and fight with me on foot." But he would not, and instead he rode out of sight. Then was Sir Percival passing wroth and heavy of heart, and lay down to rest beneath a tree, and slept until midnight. When he awoke he saw a woman standing by him, who said to him right fiercely, "Sir Percival, what doest thou here?" "I do neither good nor evil," he said. "If thou wilt promise me," said she, "to do my will whenever I shall ask thee, I will bring thee here a horse that will bear thee wheresoever thou desirest." At that he was full glad, of course, and promised just as she asked. Then anon she came again, with a great black steed, strong and well apparelled. So Sir Percival mounted and rode through the clear moonlight, and within less than an hour had gone a 4 days' journey, till he came to a rough water that roared fiercely, and his horse would have borne him into it, but Sir Percival would not suffer him. Yet could he scarce restrain him. And seeing the water so furious, he made the sign of the cross upon his forehead, whereat the horse suddenly shook him off, and with a terrible sound leaped into the water and disappeared, the waves all burning up in flames around him. Then Sir Percival knew it was a fiend by which had brought him that horse, so he commended himself to God, and prayed that he might escape temptations, and continued in prayer till it was day. Then he saw that he was on a wild mountain, nigh surrounded on all sides by sea, and filled with wild beasts of all kinds, and going on into a valley, he saw a serpent carrying a young lion rather by the neck. With that came another lion, crying and roaring after the serpent, and anon overtook him, and began to battle with him. And Sir Percival helped the lion, drawing his sword, and gave the serpent such a stroke that it fell dead. Thereat the lion fawned upon him like a dog, licking his hands, and crouching at his feet, and at night lay down by him and slept at his side. And at noon the next day Sir Percival saw a ship come sailing before a strong wind upon the sea towards him, and he rose and went towards it. And when it came to the shore, he found it covered with white samite, and on the deck stood an old man dressed in priestly robes, who said, "God be with you, fair sir. Whence come ye?" "I am a knight of King Arthur's court," he said, "and follow the quest of the Sangreal. But here have I lost myself in this wilderness." "Fear nothing," said the old man, "for I have come from a strange country to comfort thee." Then he told Sir Percival it was a fiend of hell upon which he had ridden to the sea, and that the lion whom he had delivered from the serpent meant the church. And Sir Percival rejoiced at these tidings, and entered the ship, which presently sailed from the shore into the sea. Now when Sir Bors rode forth from Camelot to seek the Sangreal, anon he met a holy man riding on a donkey, and courteously saluted him. "Who are ye, son?" said the good man. "I am a knight," said he, "in the quest of the Sangreal, the Holy Grail, and would fain have thy counsel, for he shall have much earthly honour who may bring it to a favourable end." "That is truth," said the good man, for he shall be the best knight in the world. Yet know that none shall gain it, save by sinless living. So they rode to his hermitage together, and there prayed Sir Bors to abide the night. And anon they went into a chapel, and Sir Bors was confessed, and they ate bread and drank water together merrily. Now, said the hermit, I pray thee eat no other food till thou sit at the table where the Sangreal shall be. Thereto Sir Bors agreed. Also, said the hermit, it were wise that ye should wear a sackcloth garment next to your skin for penance. And in this also did Sir Bors as he was counselled. And afterwards he armed himself and took his leave. Then rode he onwards all the day, and as he rode he saw a passing great bird sit in an old dry tree, whereon no leaves were left, and many little birds lay round the great one, nigh dead with hunger. Then did the big bird smite himself with his own bill, and bled till he died amongst the little ones. Then they recovered life in drinking of his blood. When Sir Bors saw this, he knew it was a token, and rode on full of thought, and about eventide came to a tower, whereto he paid admission, and was received gladly by the lady of the castle. But when a supper of many meats and dainties was set before him, he could only remember his vow, and bade a squire to bring him water, and therein he dipped his bread, and ate of it. Then said the lady, Sir Bors, I fear ye not like my meat. Yea, truly, he said, God thank thee, madam, but I may eat no other meat this day. After supper came a squire, and said, Madam, bethink thee to provide the champion for thee tomorrow for the tournament, or else shall have thy sister have the castle. At that the lady wept and made great sorrow, but Sir Bors prayed her to be comforted, and asked her why the tournament was held. She told him how she and her sister were the daughters of King Aniance, who left them all the lands between them, and how her sister was the wife of a strong knight, Sir Pridan le Noir, who had taken from herself all the lands, save the one tower wherein she dwelt. And now, said she, they also will take, unless I find a champion by the morrow. Then said Sir Bors, Be comforted, tomorrow I will fight for thee. Whereat she rejoiced not a little, and sent word to Sir Pridan that she was provided and ready. And Sir Bors lay on the floor, and in no bed, nor ever would he do otherwise till he had achieved his quest. On the morrow he arose, and clothed himself, and went to the chapel, where the lady met him, and they heard the mass together. Anon he called for his armour, and went with a goodly company of knights to battle. And the lady prayed him to refresh himself ere he should fight, but he refused to break his fast until the tournament was done. So they all rode together to the lists, and there they saw the lady's eldest sister and her husband, Sir Pridan le Noir. And a cry was made by the heralds that whichever should win, his lady shall have all the lands of the other. And then the two knights departed asunder a little space, and came together with such force that both of their spears were shivered, and their shields and hauberks pierced through. And both fell to the ground, sorely wounded, with their horses beneath them. But swiftly they arose and drew their swords, and smote each other on the head with many great and heavy blows, till the blood ran down their bodies. And Sir Pridan was a full good knight, so that Sir Bors had more ado than he thought for to overcome him. But at last Sir Pridan grew a little faint, that instantly perceived Sir Bors, and rushed upon him the more vehemently, and smote him fiercely till he rent off his helm, and then gave him great strokes upon his visage, with the flat of his sword, and bade him yield or be slain. And then Sir Pridan cried him mercy, and said, For God's sake slay me not, and I will never war against thy lady any more. So Sir Bors let him go, and his wife fled away with all her knights. Then all those who held the lands of the Lady of the Tower came and did homage to her again, and swore fealty. And when the country was at peace, Sir Bors departed, and rode forth into a forest until it was midday, and there befell him a marvellous adventure. For at a place where they two ways parted, there met him two knights, bearing Sir Lionel, his brother, all naked, bound on a horse as they rode. They beat him sorely with thorns, so that the blood trailed down in more than 100 places. But for this he uttered no word of groan, for so great he was of heart. As soon as Sir Bors knew his brother, he put his spear in rest to run and rescue him. But in the same moment heard a woman's voice cry close beside him in the wood, St. Mary, succour thy maid. And looking around, he saw a damsel whom a felon knight dragged after him into the thickets. And she, perceiving him, cried piteously for help, and adjured him to deliver her, as he was a sworn knight. Then was Sir Bors sore troubled, and he knew not what to do, for he thought within himself, If I let my brother be, he will be murdered. But if I help not the maiden, she is shamed forever. And my vow compelleth me to set her free, wherefore I must first help her and trust my brother unto the hands of God. So riding, the knight who held the damsel cried out, Sir Knight, lay your hand off that maid, or else ye be dead. At that the knight set down the maid and dropped his shield, and drew forth his sword against Sir Bors, who ran upon him and smote him through both shield and shoulder, and threw him to the earth. And when he pulled his spear forth, the knight swooned. Then the maid thanked Sir Bors heartily, and he set her on the knight's horse, and brought her to her men-at-arms, who presently came riding after her. And they made such joy, such great joy, and besought him to come to her father, a great lord, and he should be right welcome. But, truly, said he, I may not this time, for I have a great adventure yet to do. And commending them to God, he departed in great haste to find his brother. So he rode, seeking him by track of a horse's great while. Anon he met a seemingly holy man upon a strong black horse, and asked him, Had he seen pass by that way a knight led bound and beaten with thorns by two others? Yea, truly, such a one I saw, said the man, but he is dead, and lo, his body is hard by in a bush. Then he showed him a newly slain body lying in a thick bush, which seemed indeed to be Sir Lionel. Then made Sir Bors such mourning and sorrow that by and by he fell into a swoon upon the ground. And when he came to himself again, he took the body in his arms, and put it out on his horse's saddle, and bore it to a chapel hard by, and would have buried it. Would have, but when he made the sign of the cross, he heard a full great noise and cry, as though all the friends of hell had been about him. And suddenly the body, and the chapel, and the old man, all vanished away. It was then he knew that it was the devil who had thus beguiled him, and that his brother yet lived on. Then held he up his hands to heaven, and thanked God for his escape from hurt, and rode onwards. And anon as he passed by a hermitage in the forest, he saw his brother, sitting armed by the door. And when he saw him, he was filled with joy and lighted from his horse, and ran to him and said, Fair brother, when came ye hither? But Sir Lionel answered with an angry face, What vain words be these? When for you might think I have been slain? Did ye not see me bound, and led away to death, and left me in that peril to go succouring a gentlewoman, the like whereof no brother ever yet hath done? Now for thy false misdeed I do defy thee, and ensure thee speedy death. Then Sir Bors prayed his brother to abate his anger, and said, Fair brother, remember the love that should be between us twain. But Sir Lionel would not hear it, and prepared to fight, mounted his horse, and came before him, crying, Sir Bors, keep thee from thee, for I shall do to thee as felon and traitor. Therefore start upon thy horse, and if thou wilt not, I will run upon thee as thou standest. But, for all his words, Sir Bors would not defend himself against his brother. And anon the fiend stirred up Sir Lionel to such rage that he rushed over him and overthrew him with his horse's hoofs, so that he lay swooning on the ground. Then would have he rent off his helm and slain him, but the hermit of that place ran out, and prayed him to forbear, and shielded Sir Bors with his own body. Then Sir Lionel cried out, Now, God so help me, Sir Priest, but I shall slay thee, else thou depart, and him too after. And when the good man utterly refused to leave Sir Bors, he smote him on the head until he died. And then he took his brother by the helm and unlaced it, to have stricken off his head. And so he would have done. But suddenly he was pulled off backwards by no more than a knight of the Round Table, who, by the will of heaven, was passing by that place. His name, Sir Colgrevance. Sir Lionel, he cried, will ye slay your own brother, one of the best knights in the world, that ought no man to suffer? Why, said Sir Lionel, will ye hinder me and meddle in this strife? Beware, lest I slay both thee and him. And when Sir Colgrevance refused to let them be, Sir Lionel defied him, and gave him a great stroke through the helmet, whereat Sir Colgrevance drew his sword, and smote again right manfully. And so long they fought together, that Sir Bors awoke from his swoon, and tried to rise and part them, but had no strength to stand upon his feet. Anon Sir Colgrevance saw him, and cried out to him for help, for now Sir Lionel had nigh defeated him. When Sir Bors had heard that, he struggled to his feet to put his helmet on, and took his sword. But before he could come to him, Sir Lionel had smitten off Sir Colgrevance's helm, and thrown him to the earth and slain him. Then turned he to his brother as a man possessed by fiends, and gave him such a stroke as bent him nearly double. But Sir Bors prayed him for God's sake to quit that battle. For if it befell us that we either slew the other, we shall die for care of that sin. Never will I spare thee, if I master thee, cried out Sir Lionel. Then Sir Bors drew his sword, all weeping, and said, Now God have mercy on me, though I defend my life against my own brother. With that he lifted up his sword to strike, but suddenly he heard a mighty voice. Put up thy sword, Sir Bors, and flee, or thou shalt surely slay him. And then there fell upon them both a fiery cloud, which flamed and burned their shields, and they fell to the earth in sorest dread. Anon Sir Bors rose to his feet, and saw that Sir Lionel had taken no harm. Then came the voice again, and said, Sir Bors, go hence, and leave thy brother, and ride thou forward to the sea, for it is there Sir Percival abideth thee. Then he said to his brother, Brother, forgive me all my trespass against thee. And Sir Lionel answered, God forgive it thee, as I do. Then he departed and rode to the sea, and on the strand he found a ship all covered with white samite. And as soon as he had entered thereunto, it put forth into the shore. And in the midst of the ship there stood an armed knight, whom he knew to be the very same Sir Percival. Then they rejoiced greatly over each other, and said, We lack nothing now, but the good knight, Sir Galahad. Now, when Sir Galahad had rescued Sir Percival from the 20 knights, he rode into a vast forest, and after many days it befell that he came to a castle whereat was a tournament, and the knights of the castle were put to the worse, which when he saw, he set his spear in rest, and ran to help them, and smote down many of their adversaries in kind. But as it chanced, Sir Gawaine was amongst the stranger knights, and when he saw the white shield with the red cross, he knew that it was none other than Sir Galahad, and proffered to joust with him. So they encountered, and having broken their spears, they drew their swords, and Sir Galahad smote Sir Gawaine so sorely on the helm that he clove it through, and struck on slanting to the earth, carving the horse's shoulder in twain, and Sir Gawaine fell down upon the ground. Then Sir Galahad beat back all who warred against the castle. Yet would he not wait for thanks, but rode away that no man might know him. And he rested that night at a hermitage, and when he was asleep he heard a knocking at the door. And so he arose, and found a damsel there who said, Sir Galahad, I will that ye arm you, and mount upon your horse, and follow me. For I will show you within these 3 days the highest adventure that any knight had ever saw. Anon Sir Galahad armed him, and took his horse, and commended himself to God, bade the gentlewoman go, and he would follow wherever she liked. So they rode onwards to the sea as fast as their horses might gallop, and at night they came to a castle in the valley, enclosed by running water, and by strong and high walls, whereinto they entered, and had a great cheer, for the lady of the castle was the damsel's mistress. And when he was unarmed, the damsel said to the lady, Madam, shall we abide here this night? Nay, she said, but only till he hath dined and slept a little. So he ate, and slept a while, till the maid called for him, and armed him by torchlight. And when he had saluted the lady of the castle, the damsel and Sir Galahad rode on. Anon they came to the seaside, and lo, the ship, wherein Sir Percival and Sir Bors abode by the shore. Then they cried, Welcome, Sir Galahad, for we have awaited thee long. Then they rejoiced to see each other, and told of all their adventures and temptations. And the damsel went into the ship with them, and spake to Sir Percival. Sir Percival, know ye not who I am? And he replied, Nay, certainly I know thee not. Then she said, I am thy sister, the daughter of King Pellinore, and am sent to help thee and these knights to achieve the quest in which ye all follow. So Sir Percival rejoiced to see his sister, and they departed from the shore. And after a while they came upon a whirlpool, where their ship could not live. Then they saw another greater ship, hard by and went towards it, but saw neither man nor woman therein. And on the end of it these words were written, Thou who shalt enter me, beware that thou be in steadfast belief. And I am faith, and if thou doubtest, I cannot help thee. Then were they all adread, but commending themselves to God, they entered. As soon as they were on board, they saw a fair bed, whereon lay a crown of silk, and at the foot was a fair and rich sword, drawn from its scabbard 1/2 foot and more. The pommel was of precious stones of many colours, every colour having great virtue, and the scales of the haft were of 2 ribs in different beasts. The one was bone of a serpent from Caledon forest, named the Serpent of the Fiend, and its virtue saveth all men who hold it from weariness. The other was of a fish that haunteth the floods of Euphrates, named Ertenax, and its virtue causeth whoever holdeth it to forget all other things, whether of joy or of pain, save the thing he seeth before him. In the name of God, said Sir Percival, I shall essay to handle this sword, and set his hand to it, but could not grasp it. By my faith, said he, now I have failed. Sir Bors set his hand to it, but he failed also. But then came Sir Galahad, and saw these letters written red as blood. None shall draw me forth, save the hardiest of men, but he that draweth me shall never be shamed or wounded to death. By my faith, said Sir Galahad, I would draw it forth, but I dare not try. Ye may try safely, said the gentlewoman, Sir Percival's sister, for be ye well assured the drawing of this sword is forbid to all but you. For this was the sword of David, king, and Solomon his son made it for this marvellous pommel and this wondrous sheath, and lay it on this bed till thou shouldest come and take it up. And though before thee have some dared to raise it, yet have they all been maimed or wounded for their daring. Where, said Sir Galahad, shall we find a girdle for it? Fair sir, she said, dismay ye not, and therefore took out a box with a girdle, nobly wrought with golden thread none the less, set full of precious stones, and with a rich gold buckle. This girdle, lords, she said, is made, for the most part, of mine own hair, which, while I was yet in the world, I loved full well. But when I knew that this adventure was ordained of me, I cut it all off, and wove, as ye now see. Then they all prayed to Sir Galahad to take the sword, and so anon he gripped it in his fingers, and the maiden girt it round his waist, saying, Now reck I not, though I die, for I have made thee the worthiest knight in all the world. Fair damsel, said Sir Galahad, ye have done so much that I shall be your knight in all the days of my life. Then the ship sailed a great way on to the sea, and brought them to a land near the castle of Cartelois. When they were landed, came a squire and asked them, Be ye of King Arthur's court? Yea, we are, they said. In an evil hour have you come, he said, and went back swiftly to the castle. Within a while they heard a great horn blow, and saw a multitude of well-armed knights come forth, who bade them yield or die. At that they ran together, and Sir Percival smote one to the earth and mounted his horse, and so likewise did Sir Bors and Sir Galahad. And soon had they routed all their enemies, and alighted on foot with their swords, and slew them downright, and entered into the castle, Then came there forth the priest, to whom Sir Galahad kneeled and said, In sooth, good father, I repent me of this slaughter, but we were first assailed, or else it had not been. Repent ye not, said the good man, for if ye lived as long as the world lasted, ye could do no better deed, for these were all the felon sons of a good knight, Earl Hernox, whom they have thrown into a dungeon, and in his name have slain priests and clerks, and beat down chapels far and near. Then Sir Galahad prayed the priest to bring him to the Earl, who, when he saw Sir Galahad, cried out, Long have I waited for thy coming, and now I pray thee, hold me in thine arms, that I may die in peace. And therewith, when Sir Galahad had taken him in his arms, his soul did depart from his body. Then came a voice in hearing them all, Depart now, Sir Galahad, and go quickly to the maimed king, for he hath long abided to receive health from thy hand. So the three knights departed, and Sir Percivale's sister with them, and came to a vast forest, and saw before them a white hart, exceedingly fair, led by 4 lions, and marvelling greatly at that sight, they followed. Anon they came to a hermitage and a chapel, whereunto the hart entered, and the lions with it. Then a priest offered mass, and presently they saw the hart change into the figure of a man, most sweet and comely to behold. And the 4 lions also changed and became a man, an eagle, a lion, and an ox. And suddenly all those 5 figures vanished without a sound. Then the knights marvelled greatly, and fell upon their knees, and when they rose, they prayed to the priest to tell them what that sight might mean. What saw ye, sirs? He said, for I saw nothing. Then they told him. Ah, my lords, he said, ye are full welcome. Now I know well ye be the knights who shall achieve the Sangreal, for unto them alone such mysteries are revealed. The hart ye saw is one above all men, white and without blemish, and the 4 lions with him are the 4 evangelists. Well, when they heard this, they all heartily rejoiced, and thanking the priest, departed. Anon, as they passed by a certain castle, an armed knight suddenly came after them, and cried out to the damsel, By the Holy Cross, ye shall not go till ye have yielded to the custom of the castle. Let her go, said Sir Percivale, for a maiden, wheresoever she cometh, is free. Whatever maiden passeth here, replied the knight, must give a dishful of her blood from her right arm. It is a foul and shameful custom, said Sir Galahad, and both of his fellows concurred, and sooner will we die than let this maiden yield thereto. Then ye shall die, replied the knight. And as he spake, there came out from a gate hard by 10 or 12 more, and encountered with them, running upon them vehemently with a great cry. But the 3 knights withstood them, and set their hands to their swords, and beat them down, and slew them. At that came forth a company of 60 knights, all armed. Fair lords, said Sir Galahad, have mercy on yourselves, and keep from us. Nay, fair lords, they answered, rather be advised by us, and yield ye to their custom. It is an idle word, said Sir Galahad, in vain ye speak. Well, said they, will ye die instead? We be not come thereto as yet, replied Sir Galahad. Then did they fall upon each other, and Sir Galahad drew forth his sword, and smote on the right hand and on the left, and slew so mightily that all who saw him thought he was a monster, and no earthly man at all. and both his comrades helped him well, and so they held the field against that multitude until it was nightfall. Then came a good knight forward from the enemy and said, Fair knights, abide with us tonight, and be right welcome. By the faith of our bodies, as we are true knights, tomorrow ye shall rise unharmed. And meanwhile, maybe ye will of your own accord, accept the custom of the castle when you know it better. And so they entered, and alighted, and made great cheer. Anon, they asked from whence that custom came. Well, the lady of this castle is a leper, said they, and can be no way cured, save the blood of a pure virgin, and a king's daughter. Therefore, to save her life, are we her servants bound to stay every maid that passeth by, and try if her blood may not cure our mistress. Then said the damsel, Take ye of my blood, as much as ye will, if it may avail your lady. And though the three knights urged her not to put her life in that great peril, she replied, If I die to heal another's body, I shall get health to my soul. And like that, she would not be persuaded to refuse. So on the morrow she was brought to the sick lady, and her arm was bared, and a vein thereof was opened, and the dish was filled with her blood, and then the sick lady was anointed therewith, and anon she was whole of her malady. With that Sir Percival's sister lifted up her hand and blessed her, saying, Madam, I am come to my death to make you whole. For God's love, pray for me. And thus saying, she fell down in a swoon. Then Sir Galahad, Sir Percival, and Sir Bors started to lift her up and staunch her blood. But she had lost too much to live. So when she came to herself, she said to Sir Percival, Fair brother, I must die for the healing of this lady. And now, I pray thee, bury me not here, for when I am dead, put me in a boat at the next haven, and let me float at venture to the sea. And when ye come to the city of Sarras to achieve the Sangreal, shall ye find me waiting by a tower, and there I pray thee, bury me, for there shall Sir Galahad and ye also be laid. Thus, having said, she died. Then Sir Percival wrote all the story of her life, and put it in her right hand, and so laid her in a barge and covered it with silk. And the wind arising drove the barge from the land, and all the knights stood watching till it was out of sight. Anon they returned to the castle, and forthwith fell a sudden tempest of thunder and lightning and rain, as if the earth were broken up, and half the castle were thrown down. Then came a voice to the three knights which said, Depart ye now asunder, till ye meet again where the maimed king is lying. So they parted, and rode diverse ways. Now after Sir Lancelot had left the hermit, he rode a long way, till he knew not whither to turn, and so he lay down to sleep, if haply he may dream where to go. And of course, in his sleep, a vision came to him, saying, Lancelot, rise up and take thine armour, and enter the first ship that thou shalt find. When he awoke, he obeyed the vision, and rode until he came to the seashore, and found there a ship without sails, and without oars, and as soon as he was in it he smelt the sweetest savour he had ever known, and seemed filled with all the things he could think of or desire. And looking round, he saw a fair bed, and thereon a gentlewoman lying dead, who was Sir Percival's sister. And as Sir Lancelot looked on her, he spied the writing in her right hand, and taking it, he read therein of her story. and more than a month thereafter he abode in that ship and was nourished by the grace of heaven. And on a certain night he went ashore to pass the time, for he was somewhat weary, and, listening, he heard a horse come towards him, from which a knight alighted and went up into the ship, who, when he saw Sir Lancelot, said, "Fair sir, ye be right welcome to mine eyes, for I am thy son, Galahad, and a long time have I sought for thee." With that he kneeled and asked for his blessing, took off his helm and kissed him, and the great joy there was between them no tongue can tell. Then for half a year they dwelt together in the ship, and served God night and day with all their powers, and went to many unknown islands, where none but wild beasts haunted, and there found many strange and perilous adventures. And upon a time they came to the edge of a forest, before a cross of stone, and saw a knight armed in all white, leading a white horse. Then the knight saluted them, and said to Galahad, "Ye have been waiting a long time enough with your father now. Therefore leave him and ride this horse, until ye achieve the holy quest." Then went Sir Galahad to his father, and kissed him full courteously, and said, "Fair father, I know not when I will see thee again." And as he took his horse, a voice spake in their hearing, "Ye shall meet no more in this life." "Now, my son, Sir Galahad," said Sir Lancelot, "since we must so part, and see each other never more, I pray High Father of Heaven to preserve both you and me." Then they bade farewell, and Sir Galahad entered the forest, and Sir Lancelot returned to the ship, and the wind rose and drove him more than a month through the sea, whereby he slept but little, yet have prayed that he might see the Sangreal. So it fell upon a certain midnight, the moon shining clear, he came before a fair and rich castle, whereof the postern gate was open towards the sea, having no keeper, save 2 lions in the entry. Anon Sir Lancelot heard a voice, "Leave now thy ship, and go within the castle, and thou shalt see a part of thy desire." Then he armed and went towards the gate, and coming to the lions he drew out his sword. But suddenly a dwarf rushed out and smote him on the arm, so that he dropped the sword, and heard again the voice, "O man of evil faith, and poor belief, wherefore truest thou thine arms above thy Maker?" Then he put up his sword, and signed the cross above his forehead, and so passed the lions without hurt. Going in, he found a chamber, with the door shut, which in vain he tried to open, and listening thereat he heard a voice within, which sang so sweetly there seemed no earthly thing, "Joy and honour be to the Father of Heaven." And he kneeled down at the door, for he knew well the Sangreal was there within. Anon the door was opened without hands, and forthwith came thereat so great splendour, as if all the torches of the world had been lit together. But when he would have entered in, a voice forbade him, wherefore he drew back, looked, standing on the threshold of the door, and there he saw a table of silver, and a holy vessel, covered with red samite, and many angels round it, holding burning candles, and a cross, and all the ornaments of the altar. Then a priest stood up, and offered mass, and when he took the vessel up, he seemed to sink beneath that burden. At that Sir Lancelot cried, "O father, take it not for the sin that I go in to help that priest, who hath much need thereof." So saying, he went in. But when he came towards the table, he felt a breath of fire which issued out therefrom, and smote him to the ground, so that he had no power to rise. Then felt he many hands upon him, which took him up and laid him down outside the chapel door, There he lay in a swoon all through the night. And on the morrow certain people found him senseless, and bore him to an inner chamber, and laid him on a bed. And there he rested, living, but moving no limbs, 24 days and 24 nights. On the 25th day he opened his eyes, and saw those standing around, and said, Why have ye awoken me? For I have seen marvels that no tongue can tell, and more than any heart can think. Then he asked where he was, and they told him, In the castle of Corbenic. Tell your lord, King Peleus, said he, that I am Sir Lancelot. And at that they marvelled greatly, and told their lord that it was indeed Sir Lancelot who had lain there for so long. Then was King Peleus wondrous glad, and went to see him, and prayed him to abide there a season. But Sir Lancelot said, I know well that I have now seen as much as mine eyes may behold of the Sangreal, wherefore I will return to my own country. So he took leave of King Peleus, and departed towards Logris. Now after Sir Galahad had parted from Sir Lancelot, he rode many days, till he came to the monastery where the blind King Everlake lay, whom Sir Percival he had self seen. And on the morrow, when he had heard mass, Sir Galahad desired to see the king, who cried out, Welcome, Sir Galahad, servant of the Lord. Long have I abided thy coming. Take me thou in thine arms, that I may die in peace. At that Sir Galahad embraced him, and when he had so done, the king's eyes were open, and he said, Fair lord, Jesus, suffer me now to come to thee. And anon his soul departed. Then they buried him royally, just as a king should be, and Sir Galahad went upon his way. Within a while he came to a chapel in a forest, in the crypt whereof he saw a tomb, which always blazed and burnt, and asking the brethren what might have been, they told him, Joseph of Arimathea's son did found this monastery, and one who wronged him hath lain here these 150 years, and burneth evermore, until that perfect knight who shall achieve the Sangreal doth quench the fire. Then said he, I pray ye bring me back to the tomb. And when he touched that place, immediately the fire was quenched, and a voice came from the grave and cried, Thanks be to God, who now hath purged me of my sin, and draweth me from earthly pains into the joys of paradise. Then Sir Galahad took the body in his arms, and bore it to the abbey, and on the morrow put it in the earth before the high altar. Anon he departed from thence, and rode 5 days in a great forest. And after that he met Sir Percival, and a little further on Sir Bors. When they had told each other of their adventures, they rode together to the castle of Corbenic, and there King Peleus gave them a hearty welcome, for he knew they should achieve the holy quest. As soon as they were come to the castle, a voice cried in the midst of the chamber, Let them who ought not now to sit at the table of the Lord rise up and depart hence. Then all, save those 3 knights, departed. Anon they saw other knights come in with great haste, and at the hall doors, and take their harnesses off, who said to Sir Galahad, Sir, we have tried sore to be with you at this table. Ye be welcome, he said. But who are ye? So 3 of them said that they were from Gaul, and 3 from Ireland, and 3 from Denmark. Then came forth the likeness of a bishop with a cross in his hand, and 4 angels standing by him, and a table of silver was before them, whereupon was set the vessel of the Sangreal. Then came forth other angels, 2 bearing burning candles, and the 3rd a towel, and the 4th a spear, which bled marvellously. The drops wherefrom fell into the box he had held in his left hand. Anon the bishop took the wafer to consecrate it, and at the lifting up he saw the figure of a child, whose visage was bright as any fire, which smote itself into the midst of the wafer and vanished, so that all saw the flesh made bread. Thereat the bishop went to Galahad and kissed him, and bade him to go and kiss his fellows, and said, Now, servants of the Lord, prepare the food, such as none ever yet were fed since the world began. With that he vanished, and the knights were filled with a great dread, and they prayed devoutly. Then saw they come forth from the holy vessel a vision of a man bleeding all openly, whom they knew well by the tokens of his passion for the Lord himself. At that they fell upon their faces, and were dumb. Anon he brought the Holy Grail to them, and spoke high words of comfort. And when they drank therefrom, the taste thereof was sweeter than any tongue could tell, or any heart could desire. Then a voice said to Galahad, Son, with this blood which drippeth from the spear, anoint thou the maimed king, and heal him. And when thou hast done this, depart hence with thy brethren in a ship that thee shall find, and go to the city of Sarras, and bear with thee 3 holy vessels, for it shall no more be seen in the realm of Logris. At that Sir Galahad walked to the bleeding spear, and therefrom anointing his fingers, went out straightway to the maimed King Pelles, and touched his wound. Then suddenly he uprose from his bed, as whole as a man as he ever was, and praised God, passing thankfully, with all his heart. Then Sir Galahad, Sir Bors, and Sir Percival departed as they had been told, and when they had ridden 3 days and came to the seashore, and found a ship waiting for them, therein they entered, and saw in the midst the silver table and the vessel of the Sangreal covered with red samite. Then were they passing glad, and made great reverence thereto, and Sir Galahad prayed that now he might leave the world and pass to God. And presently, the while he prayed, a voice said to him, Galahad, thy prayer is heard. When thou askest the dead of the body, thou shalt have it, and find the life of thy soul. But while they prayed and slept, the ship sailed on, and when they woke they saw the city of Sarras before them, and the other ship wherein was Sir Percival's sister. Then the 3 knights took up the holy table and the Sangreal and went into the city, and there, in a chapel, they buried Sir Percival's sister, right solemnly. Now at the gate of the town they saw an old cripple sitting, whom Sir Galahad called to help them bear their weight. Truly, said the old man, it is 10 years since I have gone a step without these crutches. Care ye not, said Sir Galahad. Rise now and show good will. So he essayed move, and found his limbs as strong as any man's might be, and running to the table, helped to carry it. Anon there rose a rumour in the city that a cripple had been healed by a certain marvellous, strange knight. But the king, named Estorance, who was a heathen tyrant, when he heard thereof, took Sir Galahad and his fellows and put them in prison, a deep, dirty hole. Therein they abode a great while, but ever the Sangreal was with them, and fed them with marvellously sweet food, so that they fainted not, but had all the joy and comfort that they could wish. At the year's end, the king fell sick, and felt that he should die. Then he sent for the 3 knights, and when they came before him, prayed their mercy for his trespasses against them. So they forgave him gladly, and anon he died. Then the chief men of the city took counsel together who should be king in his stead, and as they talked, a voice cried in their midst, Choose ye the youngest of the 3 knights King Esterance cast into prison for your king." At that they sought Sir Galahad, and made him king with the assent of all the city, and else they would have slain him. But within a 12-month came to him, upon a certain day, as he prayed before the Sangreal, a man in the likeness of a bishop, with a great company of angels around him, who offered mass, and afterwards called to Sir Galahad, "Come forth, thou servant of the Lord, for the time hath come thou hast desired so long." Then Sir Galahad lifted up his hands and prayed, "Now, blessed Lord, would I no longer live, if it might please thee." Anon the bishop gave him a sacrament, and when he had received it, with unspeakable gladness, he said, "Who art thou, Father?" "I am Joseph of Arimathea," he answered, "whom our Lord has sent to bear thee fellowship." When he heard that, Sir Galahad went to Sir Percival and Sir Bors, and kissed them and commended them to God, saying, "Salute for me Sir Lancelot my father, and bid them remember this unstable world." Therewith he knelt down and prayed, and suddenly his soul departed, and a multitude of angels bore it up to heaven. And came a hand from heaven, and took the vessel and the spear, and bare them out of sight. Since then there was never man so hardy as to say that he had seen the Sangreal. And after all these things, Sir Percival put off his armour, and betook him to a hermitage, and within a little while he too passed out of this world. And Sir Bors, when he had buried him beside his sister, returned, weeping sore for the loss of his 2 brethren, to King Arthur at Camelot. Well, we reach the end once more of another installment of the Arthurian tales. Captivating, don't you think? I'm enjoying doing them. So I'd like to thank the top-tier patrons and supporters, that being Dark, Kimberly, Christine, Sally, Ember, Susan, Cameron, Legitmus, Carrie, Charlene, Lynn, Therese, Katiana, Nicholas, Ulfadnir, Alexander, Charles, Christine, Dr. Neuro Nerd, Erin, Jaden, Jim, Jeffrey, Jessica, Madeline, Melissa, Orthodox Review on YouTube, Scott of Stark Factory, Shell, and Wendy. Thank you very much, knights and dames. And now I retire to the round table to have dinner, because I'm a little bit hungry. You should go too and rest, meditate on what you've learned, because there's always another quest in the future. Good night, everyone. Lots of love to you all.